There's this really incredible scene that happens right near the start of the Phantom Liberty expansion for Cyberpunk 2077. A spaceplane is coming into land in Dogtown, and it has two very significant people on board, those being the president of the NUSA, Rosalind Myers, as well as Agent Songbird, a member of the FIA, Cyberpunk's fictional rebranding of the CIA. We've been hired by the latter to save the former, because Space Force 1 isn't landing by choice. It's been hacked remotely, and Dogtown is a pretty nasty place to be, especially if you're the aforementioned president of the NUSA. We've got boots on the ground in Dogtown, high up on an overwatch, so that we can spot where SF-1 touches down, and Songbird is giving us a play-by-play from inside the plane. The next hour is going to be pretty rough, but as long as nothing goes wrong, we should all be able to get out of this just fine. Of course, this is a cyberpunk story, so something has to go wrong, and that unavoidable hitch in our giddy-up shows itself in the form of a surface-to-air missile launcher, one with a hard lock on SF-1. The pilots call for evasive maneuvers, the plane pops its flares, but it never really had a chance. It gets hit hard, and suddenly its planned soft landing has become an unplanned crash landing, and it's coming in fast. And what follows is one of my favorite action pieces from pretty much any game I can think of. The Barghest, the private military of Kurt Hansen, the warlord ruling over Dogtown, they're moving to swarm the crash site, and it's a race against them to get to the wreck of SF-1 and recover Myers. So we run the streets of Dogtown, dodging the military as they cruise past us, vaulting pieces of wreckage, flaming pieces of rubble and debris from the buildings shattered in the crash, ourselves a blur to the broken, terrified people of Dogtown. Crash through the blockades as a veritable force of nature, or stalk the side streets hunting the hunters. All that matters is getting to SF-1. And it's a really well-designed set piece, so I was really in the moment during my first time encountering it, but here in my editing bay, working on that monstrous 90-minute video some of you might have heard about, I had a bit of a thought. Kurt Hansen shot down SF-1. It was going to land there already, he knew that, but he shot it down anyways. And that maybe bought him some kind of advantage in his mind when he weighed out his different choices, but the end result was the same. He lost Myers, and in doing so, probably destroyed hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of infrastructure, ended dozens of lives, and left Dogtown so much worse than it had been before for all of the people that live there. Which, of course, means nothing to him, because human lives are a thing of no consequence in Dogtown. To Dogtown, to Hansen, these people might as well be ghosts. Now you might look at me and say, Thane, this is Cyberpunk we're talking about. You made a video calling Night City a world that hates you. What makes Dogtown literally any different at all? What separates the complete indifference, the human life as a thing of no consequence in Dogtown, from the calculated brutality and vicious cycle of human use and disregard in Night City? And I'd say, yeah, I think you actually kind of got it there. Good work. Okay, here's what I really mean. Night City is, at its core, an actual city. People like us come to Night City to experience the high-octane gamble with your lifestyle of living that is being a street samurai or an edge runner. We work with fixers, we get chromed out, and we risk everything for the thrill of that massive payday. And because we typically interact with people in that same lifestyle, or people who sit adjacent to that lifestyle, that's what we artificially expect the average life to look like in Night City, but that's wrong. The overwhelming majority of people in Night City are just people. And I know it might be hard to think about everyday people making a life for themselves in Night City, but that has to be the main workforce. There's a canonical population of nearly 7 million people in Night City, and there's no way that even 1% of 1% of those people do our style of work. It's much more likely that your average person just finds work to fill in the cracks. Think back to the Konpeki Plaza heist and the two cleaners we encountered in one of the rooms, and then think about how many rooms that building must have. Think about how massive the Arasaka building is. Sure, our floor is littered with bigwigs and higher-ups, but buildings like this require all sorts of engineering work and maintenance in dozens of different senses, and that's not even thinking about how many people must work there just to file reports and push papers. There's a lot of places for someone to exist, to just fill in those cracks, or to just be another cog in the machine of Night City. And for all of the brutality of Night City, the city works. There are homes and places to live, and even if they're shit, they're still buildings built to some kind of structural code. And when you turn on the water to take a shower, you get water. The city undeniably sucks, but there's still enough energy in the place to keep the lights on, and that really means something here. The purpose of Night City is to pull people in, lure them in with the idea of a chance, and then keep them as long as possible. There is a sick, twisted attachment that we develop towards the city. Once you're in, once the city has you, the city will always have you. People like Rogue have been here for decades. She doesn't know how to function outside the city limits. People like Street Kid V get burnt and leave, looking for greener pastures and new horizons, only to come back when those things fail to deliver them. Even Misty, the city's mystic, once tried to leave. She packed her bags, flew to Nepal with the intent to stay, and even after escaping to what I can only imagine to be one of the last spiritually enriching places in this world, she still came back because she didn't know how to live without the sounds of traffic and her neighbors yelling through the walls. But to nurture this attachment, to keep its claws sharp and always ready to snare, Night City still has to function. To maintain its cycle, Night City must provide at least enough in return. Because for as much as Night City hates people, it still requires them. So when we pop over to Dogtown to help rescue the president of the NUSA and roll around in the dirt with a big-time noir mystery, you should pretty much immediately pick up that this place feels fundamentally different. It starts with the wreck of Space Force 1. The wreck kills people, it destroys infrastructure, it undeniably lowers the quality of life in Dogtown. Hansen knew this would happen. He's not an idiot, you don't get to stay in charge of a place like this if you're an idiot, but he did it anyways. Because Hansen and the Barghest, and by natural extension the place they run, both hates people and does not require them. One of the clearest signs of this is that Dogtown does not have a tax policy. Some people might like the idea of that, they might follow the idea of taxation as theft, but anyone who's taken an econ class in high school and done the basics of just showing up can tell you that taxes are important because they're pretty much the only way to justly build a civilization. And we can argue back and forth all day about how the state should spend those taxes, but every state requires money to run, and Dogtown is no exception. The Barghest do not serve Hansen for fun. Investors do not come to his parties to have a nice time. The chief of NC's police is not here because him and Hansen are friends. These people do these things because of the money involved. And if the money involved does not originate from the people of the state, then the state must still provide that money. And when it comes to money, well, that's the only thing Dogtown is interested in providing. It's important to note that the Black Sapphire, where these parties take place, is perhaps the most on-the-nose example of the let-them-eat-cake ideology, the complete disregard for the people of the state. There is exactly one place in Dogtown that looks well, that feels alive and developed, and that's here at the Sapphire. It's the one place that Hansen actually cares about because it's where his business happens. This place has to look nice because it's where the money for Dogtown comes from. This is where investors gamble on the state of warfare in the world, where companies come to sell their outdated military hardware so that it can end up in some conflict on the other side of the world. And if you're not involved in that process, you might as well not exist. You might as well be a ghost. Of course, there are some exceptions, some places where people technically matter, at least a little. If you dig around Dogtown enough, you'll find a sports facility, and while it's in Dogtown, it is entirely made up of that Night City vibe, the chew it up, spit it out regard to people. It's a business that makes a lot of money and relies heavily on people, specifically children, because its whole business model revolves around taking those children when they're far, far too young, making them incredible promises and sticking them with chrome that their bodies can barely handle. And while some children come out of it as international sports stars, most children come out of it damaged in irreparable ways. And people know this. They know that this facility in Dogtown is probably going to destroy their children, but they send them there anyways because what if it works?
Dad said I can't screw up because we live in Dogtown and career in sports is our last chance.
It's essentially a little microcosm of Night City, showing off the cycle and lure of the very worst of Night City. But adding the very worst of Night City to Dogtown doesn't make Dogtown any better. It just gives Dogtown extra ways to be shitty. Outside the exceptions, we can see so many different examples of all of the ways Hansen and his people have shown a complete disregard for the lives of the people of Dogtown. Wreckages litter the streets to the point where it can't even have just been the spaceplane wreck that caused them all. These have to have been piling up for years at least, but why would the Barghest ever clear the roads? The place where the people normally live is called the Stacks, and it's called that because the people there took empty leftover shipping containers and just stacked them all atop each other because that was the very best they could do to make some kind of home for themselves. And if they're not in the Stacks, then it's possible that they've maybe found some place of shelter in the old towers, condemned, half-finished buildings from before the war, before Hansen came and laid his own claim on Dogtown, buildings that will never be finished now, because why would they ever finish them? And it's impossible to compare the two if we don't talk about the neon. The biggest part of what makes Night City shine is the fact that it quite literally shines. The neon is the most active, most forward, most inviting part of Night City's treacherous personality, and it's impossible to miss. Get fucked, Great Wall of China, this is the kind of thing that's actually visible from space. It commands your attention and demands you come in closer. In my mind, I understand it in the same way that we understand the anglerfish's lure. It's a dark world, and there shouldn't be any light here, so the fact that there is can only be a trap or a cover. And that's exactly what it is, but at least it's there, you know? The neon covers the worst of the city, hides the true intent of the towers and the people that rule over them, just enough to keep more people coming here. But Dogtown does not need people, so it does not need neon. There are scraps of it scattered throughout the district, places that have the energy or perhaps the same want as I have, the same pull towards the glow, and in a place so dark it makes those few spots shine brighter, but truthfully those brighter shines only really then serve to contrast, to highlight how dark this place is as a whole. Human life is a non-desirable byproduct of Dogtown's entire economic model. That's why no one here cares if you live or if you die. And for all of the fact that Night City's columbarium might as well stand as a monument to the lives that the city has destroyed and consumed, there's still a columbarium. There's still a place provided by the state for you to go and remember the lives of those lost to you. Designated though it might be, there's still a place for people to end up in, and yes, it probably costs money to lay someone to rest there. Profit must be made through any avenue possible, but there's still a place, and it's somewhere nice even. It would have been all too easy for Night City to just give this land to some corp to build a factory or another mansion, and instead just have roving industrial-sized crematoriums where lost lives go in, ashes come out, and they mix them with cement, sand, and water to turn the metaphorical foundation of the city into the literal foundation of the city. But no, even a turtle gets to rest here. In Dogtown, there is no columbarium. There is no land to lay your family to rest. There is a tree, and you may place a photo upon it. Dogtown is not interested in giving you space to lay a family member to rest. Dogtown is not invested in helping you plan for your earthly exodus, because to Dogtown, whether you're alive or dead is a thing of entirely no consequence, because the only thing Dogtown is actually invested in is providing ill-gotten military hardware to banana republics and third-world dictatorships whenever they're the highest bidder. And you don't need to take care of people to run that kind of state. You don't need people to run that kind of state. So to that kind of state, its people might as well be ghosts. Okay, so some of you might have just noticed that the video ended and thought to yourself, hey, I thought you said in that poll that you had a 90-minute script, but you've only been in the closet recording audio for this video for like 15 minutes. And yeah, that's true. The original plan for the 90-minute video was to tell the whole story of my journey playing the Phantom Liberty DLC and mix in some analyzing on the way through it. But I got about 30 minutes into the cleaning up of the audio for that script before I realized something really significant.
This script fucking sucks.
So, it was back to the drawing board on that one. But here's a neat thing. If you're hearing this version of my outro, it's because I managed to rewrite that entire script into something that wasn't a monotone slog through a 90-minute play-by-play of the entire story. And if you're here for the premiere of this video, then you've got like, I don't know, 3 minutes to go get some popcorn, because that video's about to go live too. Before you go get your snacks and drinks and warm blanket to settle in for my longest video to date, I would like to ask that you consider coming over to my Patreon page and seeing if there's a tier that works for you. All my patrons get access to my work early, they get it ad-free, and they even get extra content that I don't put out on YouTube. This platform is great, but my patrons are what really helps make sure that this channel feels like a stable, reliable thing for me to do as long as I'm able to do it. So if you want to help support me and the content I make, the best way to do that is by following that link and seeing if there's a spot that has your name on it. As always, thank you.